as we continue to bring Crew 10 home. And you were mentioning that it's the 10th operational flight for Dragon to the International Space Station. Another milestone this year for NASA is it'll be at the 25th year of continuous human presence aboard the International Space Station. And in that time, a lot of science and research has been conducted, over 4,000 different research investigations across the life of the International Space Station, and things are continuing to happen during Crew 10's mission. They completed over 200 science investigations, contributing more than 600 hours of crew time to supporting that science and research aboard the International Space Station.
And speaking of the history of the space station and the crew doing experiments on the orbiting laboratory, we've also got some flight history for Dragon. Development of Dragon for crew started with the Dragon cargo spacecraft. Dragon was designed from the beginning for flying humans to space, so even from the start, the first Dragon had a window on it, even though we didn't have people on it. Before we could fly humans, our teams implemented a number of design upgrades to make sure that both Dragon and Falcon 9 were suitable for flying people, and then put both vehicles through thousands of tests to prove their safety. Now, Dragon is capable of carrying up to 7 passengers. We've been flying 4 with every single NASA crew mission. It's also capable of returning significant amount of cargo back down to Earth, which is the first private spacecraft to take humans to the space station. Dragon is fully autonomous, which means that it flies itself, but it does have features to fully manual override the vehicle in case of emergency. Dragon is also almost 27 feet tall from the bottom of the trunk all the way to the top of the nose cone. Dragon is comprised of 2 main elements: the spacecraft, which is designed to hold the crew and pressurized cargo, and then the unpressurized section, which is known as that trunk.
And we did just hear confirmation that the deorbit slew maneuver was just completed. And again, that maneuver sets up Dragon in the right trajectory and attitude to complete the deorbit burn. So we'll expect that deorbit burn to then start about 5 minutes from now that it's in the correct configuration. And again, once that deorbit burn does start, it'll last about 17.5 minutes. So a relatively long burn for deorbit today. Going back to the Dragon spacecraft and a little bit more, the nose cone at the top of the spacecraft protects the docking system and also the guidance navigation control system. The nose cone opens for docking and remains attached to the Dragon spacecraft, unlike the previous version of Dragon, which helps SpaceX towards their reusability efforts. Opposite the nose cone is the trunk, and it provides attachment points for Falcon 9 and the Dragon spacecraft and cargo. One half of the trunk is covered in solar panels that provide power to Dragon during flight and while on the International Space Station, and the other half contains a radiator that rejects heat from the active thermal control system to space using SpaceX's new Pica tiling technology. And the trunk has aerodynamic fins, which provide stability in the event of an emergency abort. And in the event of an abort, Dragon is outfitted with 8 Super Draco thrusters, which will power the astronauts to safety, which is applicable during the launch phase of a flight. And the Dragon Super Draco launch escape system is a key safety feature of Dragon, giving the crew the ability to quickly separate from Falcon 9 and safely escape the time of launch all the way to orbit, a feature that no other spacecraft in history has possessed. Dragon is also equipped with 16 Draco thrusters used to orient the spacecraft during the mission, including apogee and perigee maneuvers, orbit adjustment, and attitude control. Each Draco thruster is capable of generating 90 pounds of force in the vacuum of space, and we will see those Draco thrusters in action in just a few minutes when it conducts that deorbit burn. And right there on your screen, you're getting a live look inside the Dragon spacecraft. Closest to the camera right there is NASA astronaut and Crew 10 commander Ann McClain, and next to her is NASA astronaut and Crew 10 pilot Nichole Ayers.
Yeah, and inside the spacecraft, it's designed to accommodate up to 7 crew members with modular seats that can be removed and replaced by additional cargo. So you could see on your screen the crew members are sitting in the 4 seats, but underneath them is where they can place cargo, which is what they're utilizing the spacecraft for today. But if we needed to, we could place 3 more seats in that cargo area and fit 3 more passengers there. The seats are made of carbon fiber and will be customized, or they are customized for any crew member flying on board. So their suits, as well as the seats, are a little customized to each of the crew members flying. Now, the control panel is centered between the pilot and the commander's seats and consists of 3 touchscreen displays, which we were seeing just moments ago. And this allows the crew to operate the vehicle and fly it manually if needed, but mostly they use them for monitoring on the flight uphill to the space station, as well as right now you could see them monitoring on those display screens as they're making their way back down to Earth.
And right now we have a little bit over a minute to go until the deorbit burn begins. So we're continuing to stand by for confirmation of that deorbit burn, and we'll provide updates once it is in progress. Following the deorbit burn, again, that is a 17.5-minute burn. There will be a few activities in rapid succession. So we'll have the claw separation, the trunk separation. We'll have a little bit of a loss of signal entry. Then we'll reacquire that signal after about 7 minutes. And then right before splashdown, we'll see those drogue and main parachutes deploy. And then we'll have splashdown off the coast of San Diego, California. Less than 55 minutes until we have that splashdown. So really ramping up here and getting excited for bringing our crew 10 astronauts home.
Yeah, and again, you can follow along with the timeline, again, on the bottom center of your screen. That's the approximate time to splashdown of the crew 10 members. And again, as we've been mentioning, they are just monitoring. They have been coasting for a bit since yesterday evening, but now we're coming up to all the dynamic events that they're still going to be, following along and not really having to make any manual calls, but there's going to be a lot of dynamic events that they'll need to know what's happening because they're inside of the spacecraft, they're strapped into their seats, they can't really see what's going on outside of the vehicle, so they're going to be monitoring on those display screens that we were talking about earlier.
And so we do have confirmation that the deorbit burn has begun. Again, this burn is expected to last about 17.5 minutes. In the right-hand bottom corner of your screen, you can actually see the thruster firings as they take place. And as mentioned earlier, for these operations, NASA and SpaceX closely coordinate with the United States Coast Guard to establish a safety zone to ensure public safety and for the safety of those involved in the recovery operations, as well as the crew on board the returning spacecraft. Multiple notes are issued to mariners in advance of and during recovery operations, and the Coast Guard patrol boats are deployed to discourage boaters from entering the splashdown zones. We want to continue to stress to the public the need to respect the safety zone. Recovering a spacecraft from the water is a hazardous operation, and any other boats interfering increases risk to the astronauts in Dragon, the teams working to recover them from the water, and the safety of those that come too close. For the safety of the crew and your safety, we recommend you continue to sit back and watch as we bring you live views of the astronauts' homecoming today.
Exactly. Safety is our #1 priority. And as I mentioned earlier, this deorbit burn is the last time that those 4 bulkhead thrusters on top of Dragon will fire. Dragon Endurance has not yet entered the Earth's atmosphere, but this deorbit burn is what will line the vehicle up and put it on its final trajectory to the landing site off the coast of San Diego, California. Right now, Anne, Nichole, Takuya, and Kirill are using their screens to monitor the burn duration, Draco thruster firings, and trajectory details like entry angle, spacecraft perigee, and how much distance remains until deorbit burn termination. Dragon, again, is flying itself, so all the crew has to do is stay strapped into their seats and keep an eye on how their journey is progressing.
And we are now about 2 minutes into that deorbit burn, about 15.5 minutes to go. Things continuing to go as expected, and we'll continue to provide updates on that burn and duration as it happens.
Yeah, and as we mentioned earlier, SpaceX has been recovering Crew Dragon off the coast of the West Coast, off the coast of California. And today is NASA's first crew coming home back to the West Coast. Now, previously, NASA did do recovery operations off the West Coast, but with our NASA crew with SpaceX, we have been recovering the crew off of the East Coast previously until today. Crew 10 will be the first off of California.
Yes, it'll be an exciting milestone. And also, if you compare it a little bit to other spacecraft recoveries like Soyuz, which actually lands on land, SpaceX is a little bit unique in that aspect where we recover it in the water. So the recovery operations and things that have to happen are a little bit different. So currently aboard the International Space Station is Expedition 73. So a few days ago, there was actually a change of command ceremony where NASA astronaut Takuya Onishi handed over command to Roscosmos cosmonaut. And after departing the International Space Station yesterday, they went from 11 people on board to 7 people. So during that Crew 11, Crew 10 handover period after Crew 11 arrived on August 2nd, there was a few days of handover to get Crew 11 up to speed on space station operations and everything they needed to know before Crew 10 departed yesterday. Again, that departure taking place at 3:15 p.m. Pacific, 6:15 p.m. Eastern. So now the crew size has gone back down to 7, which is pretty standard now, except for when we have those handover periods. And we're not expecting any new crew arrivals again until the next Soyuz mission, which will be towards the end of the year. And that will also be when Expedition 74 kicks off. And also on board the International Space Station as part of Expedition 73 are NASA astronauts Johnny Kim, along with the newly arrived Zena Cardman and Mike Fink. There's also JAXA, or Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Kimiya Yui, who is also part of Crew 11, along with Roscosmos cosmonauts Sergei Ryzhikov, Alexei Zubritsky, and the newly arrived Oleg Platonov, who was also aboard Crew 11 last week.
That's quite a few crew members on the space station. I do think that it's pretty cool that we've had presence on the laboratory for the last 25 years, and we're continuing that. Even with just 7 people, there's so much science and research that they can do while they're out in space.
And if you think about it, there's been someone orbiting above your head for the last 25 years, which is truly incredible if you think about it. The deorbit burn is, of course, continuing to take place. It's a little over 5 minutes complete, so we have about 12 minutes to go before that deorbit burn is complete. Again, we're expecting it to last a total of 17 and a half minutes. Following deorbit and splashdown, Crew 10 will have spent 148 days in space, orbiting the Earth more than 2,300 times, traveling more than 62.7 million statute miles. The crew saw the arrival of 5 visiting vehicles since their arrival in March when they docked to the space station, and this included the Soyuz MS-27 spacecraft that carried NASA astronaut Johnny Kim to the station, SpaceX's 32nd commercial resupply mission, the 4th private astronaut flight, Axiom Mission 4, the Russian Progress 92 cargo spacecraft, and of course, the most recently, the arrival of the Dragon spacecraft carrying Crew 11. They also saw the departure of 6 visiting vehicles, including Northrop Grumman's 21st cargo resupply Cygnus spacecraft, the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft that returned NASA astronaut Don Pettit back to Earth, SpaceX's 32nd commercial resupply mission, the 4th private astronaut flight, Axiom Mission 4, and the Russian Progress 90 cargo spacecraft. And following the completion of Crew 10 with splashdown later today, NASA astronaut and Crew 10 commander Anne McClain will have spent 352 total days in space across 2 flights, having previously spent 204 days in space during expeditions 58 and 59. And then JAXA, or Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Takuya Onishi will have spent 263 days in space across his 2 flights to station. And then, of course, this was the first flight for both NASA astronaut Nichole Ayers and Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov, so they will have both logged 148 days in space. And we are now about 7 minutes into the duration of the deorbit burn, about 10 more minutes to go until that is completed. During their stay aboard the International Space Station, both NASA astronauts Anne McClain and Nichole Ayers conducted 1 spacewalk outside the orbiting laboratory. That spacewalk totaled 5 hours and 44 minutes. McClain has now conducted 3 spacewalks through the duration of her career for a total of 18 hours and 52 minutes spent outside the International Space Station.
Yeah, Anna, you mentioned seeing all the different vehicles that came to the space station while the crew was on board. If you haven't been following along with some of the crew members, like Nichole Ayers, she's been posting, and she actually posted after Crew 11 arrived at the space station, showed some really cool views of both Dragon Endurance and Dragon Endeavour, both docked to the International Space Station. Also, some cool spacewalk photos there you can see on your screen, and that is Nichole Ayers performing that spacewalk, which is really awesome.
And so she performed that spacewalk alongside her crewmates, NASA astronaut Anne McClain. And during that spacewalk, they did some preparation for a future IROSA, or International Rollout, or International Space Station Rollout Solar Array, and those are being added to the International Space Station's existing solar arrays to increase the power generation and output for the space station.
Yeah, something that sometimes people don't know is that the astronauts are not only scientists, but they are also mechanics. They fix things. They have to go. Spacewalk sounds like maybe that's something fun to go out and do, but they're really going out there to fix something or install something new, which I think is really cool that they have all these very diverse skills that they're able to utilize. They're really the jack of all trades.
They really do have to be the jack of all trades. And of course, if you look at their backgrounds, they have engineering backgrounds, they have science backgrounds, but they have to be able to support all of those science and research investigations. And there, currently on your screen, you actually see a photo of the Expedition 73 crew. It looks like they're all gathered together, sharing a meal inside the International Space Station. And so 11 International Space Station crew members in that photo gather inside the Unity module for a portrait. In the front row from left are Kimiya Yui of JAXA, or the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, Zena Cardman of NASA, Oleg Platonov of Roscosmos, and Mike Fink of NASA. And then in the second row are Nichole Ayers of NASA, Sergei Ryzhikov of Roscosmos, Anne McClain of NASA. And then in the back are Takuya Onishi of JAXA, Kirill Peskov of Roscosmos, and Johnny Kim of NASA, along with Alexei Zubrytsky of Roscosmos. And right now we are about 10 minutes into the deorbit burn, over halfway complete with that burn, about 7 minutes to go until it is completed, setting Crew 10 and Dragon up for their re-entry into Earth's atmosphere a little bit after that.
Yeah, and that deorbit burn should complete around the 36-minute mark on that time to splashdown clock on the bottom center of your screen. But we will wait for confirmation to call that, but it should be around that 36-minute mark.
So here in this photo, 6 of 7 Expedition 73 crew members also posed for another portrait during dinner time at the galley inside the International Space Station's Unity module. Clockwise from bottom are JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi, NASA astronauts Anne McClain and Nichole Ayers, along with Roscosmos cosmonaut Sergei Ryzhikov, Kirill Peskov, and Alexei Zubrytsky. So, of course, 4 of those crew members are returning today as part of Crew 10.
It's cool to see that they're still gathered around a table, even in space. But
most people are familiar with the idea of a mission patch, but you might not know how they come to exist. For decades, crew members have worked together to develop the patch for their mission, determining which aspects of the mission they want to highlight and any special details they'd like to include. The crew themselves can design their patch, or they can share their design ideas with an artist who makes it come to life. The Crew 10 patch is a 10-sided patch with the Roman numeral X boldly in the center, representing the 10th operational flight of the Dragon crew spacecraft. The Dragon, which is also the spacecraft's namesake, is depicted with its wings out in full flight, representing the 4 professional pilots that make up the crew complement. The Dragon is also illuminated by one of Earth's stunning and beautiful sunrises. It is focused on the International Space Station and its mission, while keeping a watchful position above Earth. The stars on the patch are red, white, and blue for the flag colors of each crew member's home country, and the brightest stars represent the crew's closest family members and support system.
yeah, I love these patches. The detail that goes into them is so amazing. Almost every single stitch on them means something, and I love that the crew is able to come together and come up with a design that means something to them.
Yeah, it's always a meaningful experience that all has some sort of meaning and inspiration drawn from all areas of their life. Again, that deorbit burn is still underway. We're just under 13 minutes into the burn's duration. That burn expected to last 17 and a half minutes total. So just a few minutes to go there, and we're seeing some great live views again inside the Dragon Endurance spacecraft, which is carrying the crew 10 members home, and you can see them actually monitoring the burn there on their screens. There in the center of your screens, of course, you have NASA astronauts Anne McClain and Nichole Ayers, the commander and pilot, respectively, of the Crew 10 mission.
And again, we are currently in that deorbit burn. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner that graphic showing the 4 bulkhead thrusters firing, all at different times. It takes a sequence of those thrusters firing to complete each and every burn. And again, this is the last time that these 4 bulkhead thrusters will be firing. Once this deorbit burn is complete, we'll start preparing the spacecraft for re-entry, and that'll come with closing the nose cone, so those thrusters will no longer be needed for the rest of their journey back home.
And you mentioned the nose cone, which will be closed. So the nose cone was initially opened following launch and orbital insertion of Crew 10. So when they first got to orbit, the nose cone was open to expose those guidance and navigation sensors on its way to the International Space Station. So it's been open this whole time as Dragon Endurance has been docked to the International Space Station. So once it closes, it'll be the first time that it's been closed since their launch and orbital insertion back on March 14th earlier this year.
Yeah, and in earlier Dragon spacecraft days, we did jettison the nose cone, but with reusability, this is one of the key improvements for reusing these Dragon spacecraft is being able to reuse the nose cone. So now we close the nose cone. It's not really needed during re-entry, but it is needed during ascent, during launch for the spacecraft. So being able to reuse it, close it when it comes back home, and then rinse and repeat.
And so we are about 15 minutes into that deorbit burn, less than 3 minutes remaining in that burn duration. You can see at the bottom right corner of your screen those thrusters continuing to fire for this burn to set it up for its entry and splashdown off the coast of San Diego, California, about 38 minutes from now, as you can see that countdown on your screen.
A great live view inside of the spacecraft. You could see some of those patches that were on near the seats of the spacecraft, showing the different crews that have flown on Dragon Endurance.
And right next to the thrusters on the bottom right hand of your screen, you can also see a map or a globe that shows where Dragon currently is. So right now it's off the coast of Australia as it continues to make its way off the coast of California. And there's less than 2 minutes remaining in the burn. The crew settled in and getting ready for their re-entry.
We are coming up on completion of that deorbit burn, expected in less than a minute from now. We will wait for confirmation.
And there you can see a good look in between NASA astronauts Anne McClain and Nichole Ayers over the shoulder as they monitor that burn on either side, the right and left screens. You can actually see those thrusters firing on their screens as well. And in the center, you can see a map of their trajectory to head off the coast of California for their splashdown near San Diego.
Yeah, as we've been mentioning, this is a fully autonomous vehicle, so they're just monitoring, and they are hearing noises inside of the spacecraft, so being able to see what's going on outside of the spacecraft helps them understand what those sounds are.
And there's about 30 seconds remaining in the burn, so we should be hearing confirmation of burn complete pretty soon from the teams here in Mission Control, SpaceX Mission Control in Hawthorne.
You saw Anne McClain using her tablet there. They do have those display screens.
Dragon, SpaceX, deorbit burn complete and performance nominal. Trunk separation sequence initiated. Dragon, copy nominal deorbit burn.
And we had confirmation that the deorbit burn is now complete and the trunk separation sequence is now beginning. This means that the umbilicals are going to disconnect and Dragon is going to separate or jettison from the Dragon spacecraft.
And we did just hear confirmation that the claw separation has been completed and that trunk separation should be taking place in about 30 seconds from now. So we're going to have several events happen in rapid succession now as we're just over 30 minutes away from splashdown.
And I was mentioning you were seeing Anne McClain use her tablets. They have the displays inside of Dragon to monitor the vehicle, but they have those tablets to follow along with very specific procedures.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trunk jettison.
SpaceX Dragon, copies nominal trunk jettison. We see entry prep.
And great news, we just heard confirmation of trunk separation. So far, telemetry is looking good. The nitrox system is primed for cabin and suit cooling, and the heat shield is now exposed and ready for atmospheric reentry.
So the trunk has now served its purpose by gathering energy from the sun through its solar cells and converting that to battery power. And since we have separated the trunk, Dragon can't generate any more new power, but they don't need it since we're coming home and Dragon has stored enough battery power to be able to make its way home. And we are now hearing that the nose cone is starting to close, so that is currently underway.
Yeah, exactly. Dragon is now closing that nose cone to protect the forward hatch for re-entry. Now, once it's closed, it will be locked by a set of hooks. And in the background, Dragon is currently inhibiting those forward bulkhead Draco thrusters that we just used to complete that deorbit burn, ensuring it's safe to latch the nose cone shut for re-entry. And here's a great live view of that nose cone coming closed.
And the nose cone is over 25% closed so far, so happening pretty quickly. Also, the Dragon spacecraft has initiated the nitrox suit purge. This will help keep the Crew 10 astronauts cool and comfortable during re-entry, which is coming up in about 20 minutes. At this point, the crew are using their screens, as you saw a few minutes ago, to monitor the locking of the nose cone. And that nose cone is now about 50% closed and continuing to close. And of course, then we'll have the hooks to fully close it.
Yeah, that nitrox is going to be very important because during re-entry, the outside of the vehicle gets really, really hot, about 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So keeping the crew cool throughout that period is going to be very important.
We are expecting that nose cone to be completely closed in about 2 minutes from now at 8:02 a.m. Pacific, 11:02 a.m. Eastern. So we're continuing to monitor the progress of that nose cone closure. And again, you're seeing great live view of the nose cone closing. That camera on the nose cone actually showing it in progress.
Yeah. And as Anna mentioned, this is a view looking forward on the spacecraft as that nose cone is coming closed. And we're getting closer and closer as the screen gets a little bit darker there to that nose cone closure.
And it's almost fully closed at this point. And then after that happens, it'll just have to be hard mated. They'll reattach those hooks. And it'll be all set up and ready for re-entry now that we've had the trunk jettison and the claw separation and the nose cone almost fully closed. Of course, that deorbit burn also completed about 10 minutes ago as well. And we did just hear confirmation that the nose cone has been fully closed, so that process is now complete.
And as we begin the second half of entry, Dragon is now beginning to inject cooled nitrox into the air, being delivered to the suits worn by Anne, Nichole, Takuya, and Kirill.
Again, this is what will allow the crew to remain comfortable while external temperatures reach that 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. And the heat shield is pointing forward, leading Dragon to the landing site. Again, that splashdown site targeted off the coast of San Diego, California.
And speaking of that heat shield, Dragon's primary heat shield is comprised of PICA 3.0, which stands for Phenolic Impregnated Carbon Ablator. First generation PICA was initially developed by NASA for studying and sampling comets within our solar system.
And SpaceX actually partnered with NASA to develop PICA X, which was the second generation product used on all Dragon 1 commercial resupply services missions, or CRS, that resupplied the space station on 20 missions. PICA 3.0 was developed specifically for use on Dragon 2 crew and cargo with enhanced structural and thermal properties that optimized the heat shield and drove down cost and mass.
The remainder of Dragon is composed primarily of a SpaceX proprietary ablative material. It's another class of thermal protection, which is lighter weight versus PICA and protects the underlying composite structure during reentry to ensure the structural capabilities are maintained.
And while Dragon will experience temperatures well over 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit during peak reentry conditions, the characteristics of the TPS, or the thermal protection systems, coupled with the ECLIS, or environmental control and life support system, in the pressurized interior of Dragon, will ensure that Crew 10 stay cool and comfortable during all phases of reentry through splashdown.
Yeah, and that's very important. They are going through a lot of dynamic events, especially that re-entry period. And while it gets hot around the vehicle, the crew is going to be experiencing a lot of movement, vibration as they're re-entering. So we want to help make sure that they're cool, that they have a temperate temperature inside of the cabin, as well as those suits. And the suits really act as an extension of the spacecraft.
And now that the nose cone has closed, those hooks are driving closed as well. So the first set of 6 hooks have fully closed, and that second set of hooks are now traveling, and then we will have it completely closed and stowed and ready for reentry. Again, we are less than 30 minutes away from the targeted splashdown, about 28 and a half minutes until that splashdown, targeted for 8:33 a.m. Pacific, 11:33 a.m. Eastern, off the coast of San Diego, California.
And after Dragon Endurance has re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, a series of parachutes will deploy to slow the crew's descent. First will be the 2 drogue chutes, followed by the 4 main parachutes to guide Dragon to its first contact with Earth since launching back in March of this year. Dragon will automatically deploy these parachutes when different pressure and positioning sensors on the spacecraft detect that they are at the right speed and altitude.
And the vehicle velocity at the time of the drogue deploy is approximately 350 miles per hour, and they deploy at about 18,000 feet. Vehicle velocity at the main parachute deploy is approximately 119 miles per hour, and they deploy when the spacecraft is about 6,500 feet. And then at the time of splashdown, the vehicle velocity will have slowed down to approximately 16 miles per hour. The highest G loads the crew will experience during reentry is approximately 3 to 5 Gs.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible how well those parachutes work. Those drogue parachutes are really important. They're 2 very small chutes, but if we didn't have those to help slow down the vehicle initially, we'd actually have to make the main parachutes about 3 times as big as they currently are.
Yeah, and so coming up, we will have a loss of signal. We're about 15 minutes away from that happening. It'll typically last around 7 minutes before we reacquire signal with the Dragon spacecraft. Again, this is completely expected. It happens during every reentry, and it's due to all of that plasma buildup on the spacecraft. And again, the team there on the left-hand side of your screen.
Dragon, SpaceX, nose cone secured for entry.
SpaceX Dragon copies.
And we did just hear confirmation that the nose cone stow is fully complete, so all of those hooks have closed and it is prepared for that reentry phase. And again, on the left-hand side of your screen, you're seeing a live look inside the SpaceX Mission Control here in Hawthorne, California. And those teams are, of course, going to continue to monitor the progress of the reentry operations. And as soon as they come out of that loss of signal that we'll have in a few minutes, they will call back up to the crew and check in on how they're doing and get prepared for a splashdown.
Yeah, the team here in Mission Control actually monitors the crew from launch all the way till they arrive at the space station. And then we hand it over to Mission Control Houston while they're on board the space station. And then this crew, again here in Mission Control, will monitor the crew as they undock and come back all the way down, all the way until they're safe back on land, actually.
Yeah, so during the dynamic operations for arriving and departing the International Space Station, the two mission controls are actually in what's known as integrated operations. So yesterday, during undocking and departure of the Dragon Endurance spacecraft and Crew 10, the SpaceX mission control team and the NASA mission control team in Houston were working in tandem during that operation until Dragon exited what is known as the approach ellipsoid, which is one of those two invisible boundaries surrounding the International Space Station that guide arriving and departing visiting vehicles to the space station.
Yeah, and I did say back on land, but I meant back on planet Earth. Once they're out of the spacecraft, then we have the medical teams checking in with the crew, making sure that they're safe, healthy, and then they'll take a helicopter ride back to land to continue their research. They do still have to get checked out, and the mission doesn't completely end right when they land back on Earth. They do still have a little bit more research to complete.
And so right when they exit Dragon, once they are on the recovery boat, again, the recovery boat is the Shannon. We're actually hearing reports that the recovery boat is staged and ready for splashdown and ready to receive the crew. But it'll begin with medical evaluations on the boat, and that will progress through exercises that improve mobility, balance, flexibility, aerobic conditioning, strength, endurance, and the body's ability to sense its position.
Dragon, SpaceX for final entry briefing. Report when ready to copy.
SpaceX Dragon, we're ready to copy.
Dragon, I have no deltas to the previously briefed times. Predicted comm blackout starting at 1520 Zulu and ending at 1527 Zulu. How copy?
SpaceX Dragon, we copy. No deltas and 1520 to 1527 for comm blackout.
That is a good read back, Dragon. The vehicle is healthy, weather is still looking good, and recovery forces are on site. I have one final reminder that the Vehicle 1 Rio LED on your control panel is unavailable. The health of the flight computer and avionics can be monitored on your displays. SpaceX will make expected calls regarding automated chute deployment. Any questions for our team?
SpaceX Dragon, Crew 10 has no questions, and we'll see you all shortly.
Copy on the no questions. And with that, can you please verify that visors are down, tablets are secured, and restraints are tightened no later than 150 kilometers?
Copy, will do.
And we did just hear that briefing between the core, the crew operations resource engineer, and the Crew 10 astronauts aboard Dragon to confirm their readiness for re-entry. We are expecting that communications blackout to take place about 9 minutes from now. Again, it'll last about 7 minutes during that re-entry phase as they start to return to Earth's atmosphere and the gravity associated with it. Again, while they were aboard the International Space Station, of course, they were in the microgravity conditions, so it does have some impacts on the human body. So the returning astronauts will undergo the same pre-flight tests to assess their health status, and these results inform a personalized reconditioning program to restore their physical performance safely and progressively to their pre-flight baseline. Post-flight reconditioning is unique for each astronaut and varies by individual. While most crew members reach their pre-flight fitness baseline within the first 45 days of returning to Earth, it is not uncommon for NASA to extend reconditioning programs to meet an astronaut's specific needs and pace of recovery. So, of course, we have a whole team that will be supporting the astronauts in their recovery. We have folks supporting them as part of NASA's Human Health and Performance Directorate, and there's a whole team specifically focused on strength conditioning and recovery as well. And so during their mission, Crew 10 contributed to more than 200 unique scientific experiments across about 600 hours of science and research and technology demonstrations during their stay aboard the orbiting laboratory. One of those experiments was the rhodium plant life experiment, and this investigation studies how radiation and gravity environments at different orbital altitudes affect plant growth by comparing Crew 10 data with plants flown aboard the Polaris Dawn mission, which flew deeper into space. Studies have shown microgravity affects growth rates, and a better understanding of the mechanisms behind this could improve plant growth techniques in space and on Earth. As mentioned earlier, NASA astronauts Anne McClain and Nichole Ayers also conducted a spacewalk to upgrade the International Space Station's power generation systems. The duo installed hardware to support an IROSA, or International Space Station Rollout Solar Array, which are more compact and produce more power than the station's original arrays. The IROSAs were first demonstrated aboard the orbiting laboratory in June 2017, and 8 have been installed to augment the power available for scientific research and other activities. During their mission, Crew 10 also used the International Space Station's Space Automated Bioproduct Laboratory to process samples for a study of microgravity's effects on the protein yield of microalgae. These organisms are highly nutritious, producing amino acids, fatty acids, B vitamins, iron, and fiber. The microalgae could provide sustainable meat and dairy alternatives during long-duration space missions. It also could be used to make biofuels and bioactive compounds and medicines in space and on Earth. And the International Space Station, of course, orbits more than 250 miles above Earth, giving astronauts a unique view.
SpaceX Dragon. Tablets are secured, restraints are tightened, visors are down, crew is ready for entry.
SpaceX copies. Crew are configured for entry. We are 5 minutes until predicted comm blackout. See you on the other side at 1527 Zulu.
Dragon copies. See you there.
And there we did just hear some additional communications between the core here and SpaceX Mission Control in Hawthorne and the Crew 10 astronauts aboard the Dragon Endurance spacecraft, confirming that their visors are down on their reentry suits and they're preparing for the reentry and splashdown activities to come. We are expecting that communications blackout in less than 5 minutes from now, as we target that splashdown in just about 18 minutes from now at 8:33 a.m. Pacific, 11:33 a.m. Eastern off the coast of San Diego, California. So again, a little bit about the science that the crew had been conducting during their 5 months aboard the orbiting laboratory. As the International Space Station orbits more than 250 miles above Earth, it gives astronauts a unique view of their home planet where they can photograph familiar places and interesting phenomena. While passing over a stormy night, NASA astronaut Nichole Ayers captured images of simultaneous lightning bursts at the top of 2 thunderstorms. Scientists used instruments installed on the space station to study lightning and other weather conditions in Earth's upper atmosphere. This research helps protect communication systems and aircraft while improving atmospheric models and weather predictions. And you can see a view of that photo there just on your screen. It's quite beautiful. And we're about 4 minutes away from that communications blackout. Another one of the experiments that the crew contributed to was the Apex 12 investigation, which examines how space radiation affects telomere activity in Thale crest plants. Telomeres, which are repetitive DNA sequences that protect the ends of chromosomes, become shorter each time a cell divides and indicate cell aging. The Apex 12 investigation could clarify the role of telomeres in aging and diseases and help scientists equip plants and other organisms for the stress of long-duration spaceflight. And to round it all out, one of the other experiments they conducted was using a fluorescent microscope known as ELVIS, which captures the motion of microscopic algae and bacteria in 3D, a new capability aboard the International Space Station. The technology could be helpful in various applications in space and on Earth, such as monitoring water quality and detecting potentially infectious organisms. And so we are now about 3 minutes away from that communications blackout, and during that we'll also have confirmation that entry begins. It typically happens about 2 minutes after the initial loss of signal with the spacecraft. Will begin that entry process.
Yeah, the communications blackout is expected at 8:20 and through 8:27. So some other cool photography while on station. Dragon docked to the International Space Station, soars 259 miles above Cambodia in this long-duration photograph revealing star trails, lightning storms, and the city lights of Southeast Asia streaking below. And I love these incredible views that they get, and they get to take these photos that we get to see, even though we don't get to be up there in space with them. Just an incredible view.
And we are now about 2 minutes away from that communications blackout, a little less than 2 minutes. And then after that, the entry will begin. We did hear that the nitrox and suit purge is underway, and they are beginning all of those entry preps. So again, we will stand by as we continue to hear from the team and as we enter this communications blackout in just a few moments.
Yeah, and the suits are there. They're an extension of the spacecraft. They help keep the crew cool, but they also have features just in case there's a depressurization inside of the cabin to help keep the crew safe and healthy during re-entry. It's unlikely to happen, but we have those suits just in case, and the suits are flame resistant. They have 3D printed helmets which are attached. Basically, the IVA intravehicular suits are used for just inside of the spacecraft, so not like the EVA suits that we were showing earlier. They're only used for inside of the spacecraft, and again, they help flow nitrox through the suit, help keep the crew cool, as well as providing them oxygen through these dynamic events as they're coming back down to Earth.
And during Crew 11's launch, we actually noticed Mike Fink has a new IVA suit, so he's debuting a new one. You can't really see too much of the details unless you look real close, but it'll be rolling out real soon.
Yeah, there was a lot of lessons learned from the Polaris Dawn mission with the SpaceX EVA suits that we've translated to the IVA suits. So Mike Fink is the first one to wear the upgraded one, but then Crew 12 is actually expected to wear all of the new designed suits. So that's pretty exciting.
It will be exciting, and we are just moments away from that communications blackout, about 10 seconds until that is underway. And so again, we are expecting that communications blackout to begin here, and it'll last approximately 7 minutes due to plasma formation around the spacecraft. And during this blackout, no vehicle telemetry is received by Mission Control, which you're seeing a live view of Mission Control on your screen, or by the recovery team, which is staged out off the coast of San Diego, California. And no external commanding of the vehicle or voice communication is possible.
And as a reminder, Dragon is designed to fly itself, so during re-entry, the vehicle will be slowing down from orbital velocity, which is approximately 17,500 miles per hour. The top temperature Dragon will experience upon re-entry is 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit, which is really hot. The blackout period is expected to last about 7 minutes. Again, it has begun at 8:20 a.m. this morning. Again, expected to be complete at 8:27 a.m. And we're not going to hear any comms right now because we know that we have a loss of signal at this moment, but at the expected 8:27 a.m. time frame, we'll start to hear some comms from the core to the crew, checking in to see if they have acquired the acquisition of signal again.
And during that 7-minute comms blackout is also when the entry phase begins. So that is expected to begin about a minute from now at 8:22 a.m. Pacific, 11:22 a.m. Eastern time. And so things will be really ramping up. Again, during re-entry, the vehicle will be slowing down from its orbital velocity, which is approximately 17,500 miles per hour. And the top temperature that Dragon will experience during that re-entry is about 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, and we do have windows on Dragon, so the crew, at least the two passengers next to the windows, are going to get to see that plasma buildup, which we've heard is a great view of all the different colors that the plasma creates as it's coming back through the Earth's atmosphere.
And so on the bottom left-hand side of your screen, you can actually see some of the vehicle data. So then once we have the signal reacquired, that will update a little bit. But before that reentry, they were at an altitude of about 82.5 kilometers. So continuing to come back down again as the International Space Station itself. So when it was docked, it was at about 260 statute miles above Earth's atmosphere.
And less than 11 minutes until splashdown of the Crew 10 crew. And again, they're currently in a blackout period, so we're not going to have any visuals. We're not going to have any comms for a few more minutes. We're about 2 minutes into the blackout period, about 5 minutes left.
And during or right after that splashdown, a lot of things will happen in rapid succession. So it takes about 45 minutes from splashdown until the boat is fully onto the recovery boat, the Shannon, which is staged out in San Diego, California. And then after it is hoisted up onto the boat, the hatch will be opened and we will welcome Crew 10 back aboard the boat, and they will begin those medical checkouts and evaluations before they are flown back to shore off the coast of California, and then from there they will be prepared to fly back to Houston and begin their full recovery and be greeted by friends and family. And so we're now a little over 3 minutes into the communications blackout, about 4 minutes to go. The vehicle should be experiencing that entry phase right about now. Once we have that communications back, we'll have those initial comm checks, and about 2 minutes after we reacquire that signal, we do expect the drogue parachutes to deploy, followed in rapid succession by the main parachutes deploying. Again, that will slow the vehicle down even further to about 16 miles per hour at the time of splashdown. Again, we are less than 10 minutes away from that targeted splashdown, expecting it around 8:33 a.m. Pacific, 11:33 a.m. Eastern.
And the really cool part about the Dragon spacecraft is we're actually utilizing the Earth's atmosphere, that re-entry, to help slow the velocity of the vehicle significantly from 17,500 miles per hour down to about 350 miles per hour is when the drogue parachutes will deploy. And then after the main chutes are deployed, by the time that the vehicle splashes down onto the water, it's about 16 miles per hour. So really, really slow compared to how fast they've been moving for the last 5 months.
And then once they splash down, it's pretty quick. Those initial two fast boats will get out there within moments, a minute or two after splashdown, and they will conduct those initial safety checks. So they will screen for hypergol and make sure everything is okay for the recovery teams to approach. Some of the teams will also then get onto the spacecraft and begin safing it and prepare it to lift up onto the boat, and other teams will be working on the parachutes and gathering those up. Again, we are about 2 minutes away from the expected acquisition of signal. That initial loss of signal took place about 5 minutes ago during that reentry phase as a result of all the plasma buildup. Again, it's completely expected, and it happens during every reentry of a spacecraft from its journey in space. Again, Crew 10 is returning after an about 5-month science and research mission aboard the International Space Station. They initially launched aboard a Falcon 9 rocket out at Kennedy Space Center in Florida on March 14th, and then docked shortly after that to the International Space Station. They spent 5 months doing all of that science and research, and then they undocked yesterday at 3:15 p.m. Pacific, 6:15 p.m. Eastern Time to set them up for today's re-entry and splashdown. And we are expecting that acquisition of signal to take place about 90 seconds from now. So a little bit more than a minute to go until we hear those call-ups from the core to the crew to check back in with them, and less than 7 minutes to go until we have splashdown.
Yeah, it's getting very exciting here. I'm sure the crew is very excited to make it back home to planet Earth.
And there on your screen on the bottom left, you can actually see the telemetry catching back up.
see them getting very close to the coast of California.
Dragon, SpaceX, comm check.
SpaceX Dragon, we have you loud and clear.
I have you the same, Dragon. Expect automated chute deployment.
Dragon copies.
And so we did just hear that call up from the Corps, the crew operations resource engineer here in SpaceX Mission Control, to the crew 10 astronauts currently aboard Dragon. Confirmation that we have reacquired signal with the Dragon spacecraft, and you can see that the speed is rapidly slowing down as it begins its final phase, and we will have confirmation of those parachutes deploy in just a few moments.
Yeah, you can also see the altitude in the bottom left-hand corner. You can see it getting closer and closer back down to Earth.
GPS converge. Expect nominal altitude for drogue chute deployment.
And the Corps just informing the crew of what's going on. They're going to be feeling a lot of different things inside of the spacecraft where they can't see what's going on outside. So they will expect the drogue parachutes to deploy, so they'll know what that feeling is inside of the spacecraft. And again, you can follow along the altitude in the bottom left-hand corner as the crew is getting closer and closer to planet Earth.
And we are expecting those drogue parachutes to deploy a little bit after 8:29 a.m. Pacific, 11:29 a.m. Eastern.
And the crew there on your screen rotating in their seats in preparation for that splashdown. During that reentry, they are leaning more on their backs, but when they are coming in for splashdown, they can sit a little bit more upright in preparation for that touchdown.
And on your screen from left to right is Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov, NASA astronaut Nichole Ayers.
Brace for drogue window.
NASA astronaut McClain and JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi. Again, they are getting prepared for that drogue deploy, which should be happening in just a few moments from now. Again, we expect that a little bit after 8:29 a.m. Pacific, 11:29 a.m. Eastern, and it will be followed shortly thereafter by the main parachutes deploying. And there you're seeing a live look as from the recovery team, a helicopter that has a camera tracking the spacecraft during its reentry. We do have confirmation that the drogue deploy is underway.
There are those two drogue
Visual
chutes.
and 2 healthy drogues.
Copy healthy drogues. Copy healthy drogues.
And a great live view from the spacecraft itself, seeing those 2 healthy drogues deployed.
And the spacecraft has now slowed down to less than 200 kilometers per hour, and it is now just over 2 kilometers above the water as it prepares for splashdown, and we should have that main parachute deploy in just a few moments to continue slowing the spacecraft down to about 16 miles per hour at the time of splashdown.
There's the main chutes deployed. They're going to open up here shortly.
Main chute descent rate nominal.
And we do have confirmation and a visual view.
Dragon copies. Dragon copies.
1,000 meters. 1,000 meters.
And
We copy 1,000 meters.
And there's a great look of the Dragon Endurance spacecraft as it makes its way to its splashdown site off the coast of California under those 4 main parachutes that have now deployed and about 900 meters away from the water surface.
Dragon, 800 meters. Dragon, 800 meters.
800 meters.
Crew monitoring their altitude as they make their way to splashdown. I love these daytime views that we get We don't always get to pick the time when the crew splashes down, but it's awesome when we have a great morning and a clear view watching as the Dragon Endurance spacecraft carrying Crew 10 is...
SpaceX Dragon, 600 meters. SpaceX Dragon, 600 meters.
I copy 600 meters.
Crew just 600 meters away from splashdown.
And just over a minute away from that targeted splashdown time, again expected around 8:33 a.m. Pacific, 11:33 a.m. Eastern. Now about 500 meters away from the surface of the water. And slowed down to about 35 kilometers per hour. Again, it'll continue to slow down.
SpaceX Dragon, 400 meters. SpaceX Dragon, 400 meters. Splashdown. Brace for splashdown.
SpaceX copies 400 meters and crew are braced for splashdown.
We just saw an incredible view there of the Dragon as it re-entered under some cloud cover. And we should be regaining some of those live views from the recovery zone momentarily as it gets resituated to capture the return. The spacecraft is now about 200 meters above the ocean, and it has slowed down to about 30 kilometers per hour. Again, it will continue to slow down until about 16 kilometers per hour. And there we can see another live look of the Dragon Endurance spacecraft carrying Crew 10 back home to Earth following their 5-month mission, moments away from splashdown.
SpaceX Dragon, splashdown. SpaceX Dragon, happy splashdown.
SpaceX copies splashdown.
And we did just hear that confirmation of splashdown. The view that you're seeing on your screen is a little bit delayed, which is why we don't have that visual confirmation yet, but we do have that verbal confirmation between the crew and the core that they have successfully splashed down, and Dragon Endurance has now returned home. And there is that live look of Dragon Endurance as it sits on top of the ocean off the coast of San Diego, California.
Dragon, SpaceX, we see the onboard for Power 1 28-volt converter. No crew action required at this time. Stand by for more words.
Dragon copies, no crew action on the caution. Dragon copies, no crew action on the caution.
Dragon Endurance has now returned home, and NASA astronauts Anne McClain, Nichole, Ayers, JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi,
and SpaceX Dragon for step 1.2, and SpaceX Dragon for step 1.2, 4 at 800, you see 4 fired.
And
Dragon, we see the same.
And Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov are back on Earth after an approximately and a half based in.
The SpaceX recovery ship and team has been waiting for Dragon splashdown, and they will now start to make their way to the splashdown location. The teams have been ready and waiting about 3 nautical miles away, so it's going to take them about 30 minutes to make their way to Anne, Nichole, Takuya, and Kirill inside of Dragon.
And so we did have splashdown happen on time at 8:33 a.m. Pacific, 11:33 a.m. Eastern off the coast of San Diego, California. And so we are eagerly awaiting that recovery. There are a few steps that take place before the crew can exit the spacecraft. First, those fast boats will go out to the recovery location to conduct some initial safety checks, test for hypergol, and ensure that everything is safe and ready for the recovery teams to approach, and then proceed through those following steps to get the capsule back onto the recovery boat, the Shannon. And so the Shannon will make its way out to the specific recovery location. It takes about 30 minutes for it to get out there. So by the time the safety and hypergol checks...
3.1 are upright.
We copy Stable 1. On behalf of SpaceX, welcome home. System safety verifications are in progress. I will report back when recovery personnel are en route.
SpaceX, Dragon, from the entire crew 10. Thank you for that flight. Truly an honor of a lifetime. That last 20 minutes, I think 20 minutes. Carnival ride. We get back the line and we go again. Thanks for the safe landing. We'll see you shortly.
And so you did just hear some congratulatory words between the SpaceX teams here in Mission Control and Hawthorne, as well as NASA astronaut Ann McClain, who is the commander of Crew 10, so exchanging those celebratory words as they are now successfully and safely back on planet Earth following their mission aboard the International Space Station. And for those of you who are just joining us, this mission has gone smoothly so far, and Dragon successfully splashed down off the coast of San Diego, California at 8:33 a.m. Pacific, 11:30, just about 5 minutes ago.
Approximately 17 and a half hours prior to splashdown, Dragon autonomously undocked from the International Space Station, completed a series of departure burns, jettisoned its trunk section, and performed its final burn, the deorbit burn, to place itself on a trajectory towards San Diego, California. Dragon successfully re-entered the Earth atmosphere, followed by deployment of its parachutes to slow the spacecraft down to a gentle splashdown. And we'll now follow the final part of Anne, Nichole, Takuya, and Kirill's journey as Dragon is lifted out of the water and placed onto the recovery boat.
And upon detection of landing, Dragon does automatically release the main parachutes to prevent wind from pulling the spacecraft. And then Dragon automatically safes any pyrotechnics still present on the vehicle and may automatically perform additional minor system reconfigurations. The astronauts do remain seated and in their suits at this point, but the onboard air conditioning keeps things temperate inside the spacecraft, and the communication systems on board remain powered so the crew can continue to communicate.
Now, SpaceX has 2 fast boats in the recovery fleet, which have moved quickly to the splashdown point, and you can see one of them there on your screen next to the Dragon Endurance spacecraft. They are being followed by one of the main recovery vessels, which will move into position upon upwind of the spacecraft. The 2 fast boats have very specific roles. The first approach is focused on immediate safety inspection of the spacecraft integrity and checking for any presence of hypergolic propellant vapors, ensuring that it's safe for the recovery vessel to approach Dragon. Now, once Dragon is cleared for full approach, the team begins rigging the spacecraft for water recovery by the recovery ship. The second fast boat is responsible for parachute recovery and also serves as a redundant boat to the first. And we'll see a team member on a jet ski soon helping to gather up the detached parachutes.
And it does take about 10 minutes for the recovery crew to complete their safety checks. And then once complete, the team will begin preparing Dragon to be lifted onto the recovery vessel, the Shannon, today. As part of the preparation for this lift, one member of the recovery team will climb on top of the spacecraft so they can attach Dragon's hoist rings and connect the lifting lines. It will take less than an hour to raise Dragon to the recovery boat and remove the crew from the spacecraft. After those initial medical checkouts, the crew will return to land within 4 hours by helicopter, and if no additional medical assistance is needed, the crew will then board a waiting NASA plane and depart for Houston and make their way home. And so just about 7 minutes ago, Dragon Endurance did return home, and NASA astronauts Ann McClain, Nichole, Ayers, along with JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi and Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov, are back on Earth after an approximately 17-and-a-half-hour journey from space.
SpaceX recovery ship and team has been waiting for Dragon splashdown, and they're now currently making their way to the splashdown location. The teams have been ready and waiting.
Dragon, SpaceX, we are go for recovery personnel to approach the capsule. Expect fast boats alongside in about 1 minute.
Copy 1 minute. Copy you guys are on it. Thanks. You guys are on it. Thanks.
And so we did just hear confirmation that the recovery boats or the fast boats have been given the confirmation to proceed. So those recovery steps will soon commence. Again, it takes about 10 minutes for all those safety checks to be completed. And we actually have a team member out on the recovery boat who we will be hearing from momentarily to get her perspective. And so joining us from the recovery vessel is NASA Public Affairs Officer Reagan Scharfetter, who had a first-hand view of the crew returning and splashing down. Reagan, can you hear us? And how was the view from the recovery vessel?
Hey there, Anna and Jesse. How do you hear me?
We hear you loud and clear.
Awesome. Well, seeing splashdown firsthand was a moment and I assume others on board will play back for the rest of time. We were stationed within 1.5 nautical miles from the splashdown zone off the coast of San Diego and had fairly decent visuals from the Shannon recovery vessel. The cloud ceiling is actually higher than originally forecasted at around 1,100 feet, which gave us a little more room to see the Dragon spacecraft coming in on this misty morning. Even with these cloudy skies, though, we were able to witness the 4 white and orange main parachutes before Endurance descended down into the Pacific Ocean. And now we're just eagerly awaiting our Crew 10 members to join us on the ship very soon.
That's very exciting, Reagan. I'm so happy that you have that firsthand perspective. You mentioned the cloud cover a little bit, but overall, how have the landing conditions been from your perspective?
The landing conditions were nominal this morning and within limits in regard to sea state, winds, and cloud ceiling. There was also some excitement earlier on board when we spotted not only whales, but also a pod of dolphins and a shark out on our starboard side. Currently, it's about 66 degrees out with 5 mile per hour winds and what has been described as a pretty mild sea for the ship, but what could be more of a rougher ride for the capsule itself. Irregardless, after spending 146 days aboard the International Space Station, I think this crew is going to be more than thrilled with this fun reintroduction to the planet.
We're going to have to keep our eyes peeled for some whales over here, I guess. But can you tell us a little bit about the recovery journey to get to this point?
Yeah, absolutely. One standout part of this recovery is that Crew 10 actually marked the first crewed
Dragon,
NASA mission.
SpaceX, hypergol sweeps, and unfired ordnance checks are nominal. Rigging is in progress. Approximately 5 minutes until capsule lift. We have flight surgeons standing by. Please confirm crew are ready for PMC.
Copy, 5 minutes. Copy, 5 minutes to lift. Cruise.
So we did just hear some communication there, about 25 minutes to
Copy,
lift.
Dragon. The next call you hear will be from flight surgeon on Dragon to ground private.
Dragon, copy.
And you can see that view there of the 2 fast boats and that rigging underway. Reagan, do we still have you? Do you want to continue on about the recovery journey to get to this point?
Yes, absolutely. As I was saying, one standout part of this recovery is that Crew 10 marks the first crewed NASA mission to return to the Pacific Ocean since 1975. That's 50 years ago when the Apollo-Soyuz mission ended. The landing zone shift from the Gulf and Atlantic sites shows the commercial crew program's continued flexibility and adaptations to mission needs, but this doesn't go without paying attention to new perspective challenges like marine layer and visibility issues, as well as some rougher sea states, which we are getting a slight taste of today. These are also conditions the Artemis II recovery team will be tracking ahead of their mission next year, which too will conclude with a splashdown off the Pacific